Hello, and welcome to the Massachusetts Farm to Table podcast, where we explore the fields, kitchens, and stories that make the Massachusetts food scene so special. I'm your host, Nissa. Each week, we'll connect with farmers, food producers, and the community that makes the Commonwealth's food scene so vibrant. Join me as we meet the passionate farmers, food producers, and chefs who are shaping the farm to table movement right here in Massachusetts. Welcome back to the Massachusetts Farm to Table podcast. I'm delighted to have with me today Amanda and Brett Sovick of DeLorenzo Farm in Duxbury, where they steward 27 acres using regenerative practices and permaculture principles. They also own and operate Fowl Play Farm at Misbehaven. They're a diversified operation with eggs, poultry, vegetables, and more. We had such a good time talking that this podcast is in two parts. Here's part one. Hi, Brett and Amanda. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your farm and how you got started and the history of your farm?
You want me to do that?
You're the farmer.
Well, yeah, farmers wear a couple hats, so I was just making sure. So basically the farm vision happened basically during COVID, when we had to sit down for about 25-ish years. Before that, I was running around chasing contracts and doing work as a geographer, making maps for federal and state clients. And that kind of work, although it was rewarding and very fulfilling for a time, had begun to wear on me. And whenever I sat down and looked across the table at everybody, I realized just how much time I was losing. And so I said, I've got to make a change. And this person said, hey, if you want to do the farm thing, after a lot of conversation, she said, I'm right behind you. So the great thing is that's sort of how the idea was born. And then it was figuring out what path we were going to take. And so with the happening in Duxbury, where the DeLorenzo farm property was offered for lease, I jumped on it, and here we are.
So are you stewarding DeLorenzo Farm? Is that sort of how does that arrangement work?
Well, it's a lease with the town. So we're managing the property for them. They want to see it restored to its historic agricultural use. And that could be an entire podcast in and of itself that we have to get more people involved with. This whole Route 53 corridor used to be all farms and mostly turkey farms. But over time, it became residential property with very few exceptions. There aren't many farms anymore. And the DeLorenzo property became conservation land. Conservation Department bought it. And they wanted to restore it to its original agricultural purposes or original agricultural use. And but there's a lot involved with that. So they put out a request for proposal. Brett wrote a proposal based on everything that he had been learning over the years. He reads everything that's out there. He studies what other people are doing, modeling sustainable practices and farming practices that are successful, other small farmers who are successful. And he said, I want to give this a whirl, and wrote a proposal. The town is totally on board with it, and we are up and running. And up until then, we had done basic backyard farming. I've always had a garden ever since I can remember. My mother had a garden in the backyard. My grandfather had a garden in their backyard in Flushing, New York, of all places, believe it or not. He just sent plants home with me every single time I went to visit. And so I've always had vegetable gardening in my life. Brett got us into the chickens, and then they call that the gateway. It is a gateway, because then we ended up with ducks and quail and also in geese. Yeah, so we've got a bunch of we've got a whole menagerie of birds now. But the opportunity with the DeLorenzo farm gives us an opportunity to scale up what we're doing on a personal level and bring it to the town, because it's town-owned property. Mm-hmm. We might be the next people to lease it again. It might be somebody else who leases it, but they'll be taking on a property that's already being operated as a farm. And, the whole idea is to bring community farming back to local communities.
So is your lease limited then to a certain number of years, and then do they open it back up to proposals again?
Right. So the lease is on a 10-year cycle. Okay. That's how they designed it. They modeled it after Soul Farm, and they basically the original thought, as far as the land was concerned, was they were considering leasing off 1-acre parcels, and they had some people respond to their request for proposal. And it's so funny, I just had this conversation earlier today. There were 3 of us who showed up for the walkthrough almost a year ago to the day. No, sorry, it's 2024. It was 2021. So math, 3 years ago to the day, for the walkthrough. And there were 3 of us who were there. And the original plan for that parcel was to deforest it, and then turn it all into fields so that it could be used as a vegetable farm. And the 3 of us were standing there looking around. There was already an open meadow in the center of the parcel. On the south side of the parcel, there were about 2.5 acres that were in hay that were connected to our neighbor, Carl O'Neill, who is the last remaining O'Neill.
And operates the historic O'Neill farm.
Right.
Yeah.
So the town had proposed this, and we're looking around at the resources, and the 3 of us were kind of like, why can't we just sort of maintain the forest and then farm the open land that's here? And I learned at that point in time that my mission wasn't just to become a farmer. My mission is to become an educator, sort of, and also to become a disciple of a way of farming that we haven't done for generations, but we have done for thousands of years. So for me, it was kind of a life-changing event where we're standing around looking at the land and recognizing what resources are there. And I just simply said to the conservation folks, well, why don't we just work on maintaining the forest that's here? Do some selective harvesting, turn some stuff into silvopasture, and then eventually generate a food forest, and do some rotational grazing, and then have produce fields in the center. And they were like, "What planet are you from?"
Planet permaculture. Hi.
Right. And, the funny thing about this all is I hadn't had a lick of permaculture up until that point in time. I hadn't given that thing a thought. My whole perspective in like animal husbandry and produce growth, gardening, was simply trying to do things with minimal inputs, and with just the kind of stewardship and care that you should put into your food. And so many people don't think about that. So the proposal turned into kind of a life statement for me, and that is to engage community, bring in people who are sort of like-minded, or even who aren't like-minded, people who don't think that you can't have a carrot without dumping a bunch of Miracle Grow on it, and showing them that it works.
Right.
So the whole idea behind the proposal for the farm was more of a statement of my my midlife crisis. So I didn't run off and buy a really expensive car and do really dumb sort of stereotypical men things whenever midlife crises are talked about. I quit my job and became a farmer, and so we're kind of working through that part.
So you're 3 years in now.
Yeah, technically we are 3 years in. The first year of the whole operation was just really hashing things out. I don't think that we didn't turn a shovel full of soil year one, because we were working on getting everything coordinated and laid out and mapped for the infrastructure. There's no infrastructure at all on the farm, and developing the forest management plan so that we could produce the silvopasture that we're starting to produce now.
Yeah. So year one was, for first and foremost, is getting water on the property. There was no water. There are now 2 wells on the property. The meadow that Brett was referring to has been opened up a little bit more. There was minimal clearing that needed to be done in order to open it up and make it more usable for planting beds. And then the wooded area that is to the north of that meadow, all of the, for lack of a better word, junk brush, like the fallen trees, the downed trees, the things that aren't doing well because the canopy is kind of choking them out, has been not cleared out, but cleared back, and the materials are still on site. And the plan is to put different paddocks going through there and running animals through pastures. And all of the wood that's been taken down on the property has been turned into wood chips, and those wood chips are used for animal bedding, and they're used for the agricultural beds. And so everything that's on the property is staying on the property and being put to use.
Yeah, conservation, we kind of blew conservation's mind whenever we were writing the proposal, and then whenever we started to execute things, because their whole mindset, and this is the educational part, is even though conservation has a fantastic agricultural commission that they can turn to, there's still so much to be learned. And conservation couldn't believe that we were going to reapply all of the materials that were harvested in the development of the land back into the land. They were prepared to haul off all of the wood chips that we produced. They were prepared to haul off all of the logs that were felled. Like any conservation land that you visit in the glorious Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that conservation land that is forested is a disaster. It's a fire waiting to happen because it's not properly managed. The DeLorenzo property was a tinderbox. It still partially is, because what happens is, trees that blow down and pile up turn into fuel, right? Or potential fuel. And then you have seedlings that grow up through that and they race for the sun. They choke each other out and you get big, long, skinny trees, really skinny trees that are very poorly rooted, and they end up becoming more tinder for the firebox. So that's what was going on with the DeLorenzo farm. Whenever I came to see it, we pulled all of the dead and down material out. We selectively harvested, and we still are. It's only probably a third of the way complete. We have a long road to go yet, and we're turning those materials back into things that we can use on the farm. So, fence posts. The first produce bed, which is a 10,000 square foot produce bed, one of three, had over 350 yards of wood chips spread out over the entire thing. I call it a carbon bomb. And we spread it out over the entire area. And then I started sheet mulching on top of it. This was year 2, whenever we started doing that. And that's whenever we got involved with the Marshfield Farmers Market, because I did a couple test rows. We worked with South Shore Permaculture to build a partial hugelkultur mound, planted some stuff into that, and the abundance was ridiculous. I mean, we were inundated with produce, and it got to the point where we were just like, okay, well, we have to find a venue, because we have no visibility from the street. We have nothing, and there's mountains of produce that's happening right now.
And this was pre-fencing, by the way. So as he's doing these things, the hugel mound and the test produce beds with the sheet mulching, I'm thinking the animals are going to eat everything. There's no fencing around this place, and it's gonna get annihilated, because this is putting out the dinner plate. And we had so many beautiful, healthy vegetables, and that's when we started bringing them to the farmers market. And
right.
I have every confidence that this coming year, when it's very directed and purposeful,
right,
we're definitely going to have a lot more.
Yeah, and that's what we're getting to. I mean, we did have a random visitor or two, that came and snacked on some tomatoes or whatever. And one of the things that was a great observational thing for me was that some animals are very selective in what they decided to grab, right? And so if you diversified what it is that you're growing, even if it is in an unregulated field, where you don't have a fence, you can still put a produce plot in. And just expect a certain level of attrition, and still get a harvest. It's not something that's out of the realm of possibility at all. It just takes a little bit of energy, right? And it does work. But we were lucky; we didn't have anything kind of mowed down that I'm aware of,
except for the apple trees.
Well, yeah. So we had the scouts, the Girl Scouts came in and they donated 4 random apple trees, and they wanted to plant them on the farm. And so we let them. The apple trees are still there. They got pretty aggressively pruned, but they look like they're rebounding. And so if I can sort of nurture them along through the spring here, I think we'll be okay. But it was kind of touch and go with those guys.
So actually, my next question was going to be about the community. You mentioned it earlier, And it sounds like there might be a lot of community involvement around or interest in your farm.
Tons.
Definitely
How that works for you?
Yeah, definitely interest. I think there's more interest than an involvement up to this point because a lot of it's been a construction zone, not activities that are really good for having small children on the farm. There's, a lot of construction materials still, but we're getting to the point where we can do that. This past weekend, we just had Boy Scouts on the property helping to prepare some of the planting beds, and we can definitely do a cleanup day because there was a waste pit at the back of the property that got cleaned out by the town, but there's still a bunch of trash that needs to be picked up all over the place. So we have that. We had a few people come and help out with putting the fencing around the agricultural beds because that was a pretty big task, and that was we were grateful for the help. And but there are lots of people who are interested in coming and helping, and having their kids be hands-on. One of the things that we're looking to do is bring more 4-H to the community, and give the kids an opportunity to do it themselves, and to have that be part of their lives as they're growing up, and they can carry it forward.
Yeah, we're actually working with a group here in Plymouth. They're sheep group. They're big into sheep, and we have 4 sheep that we've brought to the farm just a few weeks ago, and so the 4-H kids are going to come out and they're going to show me how to shear a sheep, which is going to be fun. That might be a separate podcast.
Video on that.
Hopefully my mustache will stay attached. But yeah, the community involvement is a huge thing, and I mean it's a big permaculture thing, right? Getting people to engage with the process so that they understand what it is that they're actually eating, right? Because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to the food that you put in your mouth. It comes down to the experiential, right? It comes down to those things that you can feel and you can touch and you can smell, and all of the things. And people aren't used to that. People are used to cellophane and packaging and, just all of the things that are so disconnected to our food. And the whole mission really behind the farm, besides growing the way that we're growing, we're using principles of permaculture, but we're flexing it in a regenerative farming model, right? And we're taking that approach because the goal is to build resilience in the farm, right? The word sustainability is so abused. The word sustainable is so abused because everybody and their brother connects it with, oh, your ability to get through things. And sustainability, as it sits, yeah, sure, that's what the word means, but it's really not. Because in order to achieve sustainability, you have so many different pathways, right? People say, okay, well, I'm sustainable because I'm an organic farmer, right? Well, that's not really the case because of all of the things that are connected to organic farming. And I don't begrudge a single farmer of practices that they use or any approach that they take. As long as they're out there willing to farm and willing to do the work, God bless all of them. It doesn't really matter. There's an approach that I believe trumps all of that. Is it a panacea of farming? No. Regenerative farming is not. But what regenerative farming delivers is nutrient-dense food. It delivers engagement with the community through permaculture. And regenerative farming builds the most important thing, and that is the soil microbial community. The soil microbial community is the key to the most healthful food you can put in your body. If you figure out how to properly nurture and grow that, right, through sustainable practices, right? Isn't that funny?
Right. Yeah.
And by sustainable practices, I mean things like planting cover crops, rotating livestock through those same fields to graze down that cover crop and feed off of it, while at the same time manuring and tilling with their action, with their hooves, with their, chicken feet, with all of the things. And, causing that soil microbial community to respond, in a way that nothing on the planet can do. And whenever you put those things together and you fortify that soil microbial community, the produce that you put in there to grow as your cash crop to help you as the farmer, that's the thing that benefits the most, because it's a stronger, not stressed, healthier plant. And whenever it's stronger and not stressed and healthier, that means it can resist pathogens. It can repel insects. It can do all of the things that it's supposed to do in nature. And if you kind of think along the lines of guilds or interplanting, you can kind of help those plants along by combining different types of plants in the different planting space, in the same planting space, so that you're getting resilience not only through the soil, but also through the activity of, each different plants being in close proximity to one another.
What a lot of people don't understand or don't really think about is that when you apply pesticides to crops in order to protect them from insects and pathogens, not only are you killing the insects and pathogens, but you're also killing that microbial community that is so intimately associated with the root structure underground. And when you kill that microbial community, those plants are not taking up the nutrients from the ground. Our food is less nutritious than it used to be. And then even applying fertilizers after that to help provide more nutrients to those plants to hopefully help them grow bigger and better, they're still not taking that up because that microbial community is gone. And all of those fertilizers that you're dumping on the ground is going right into our groundwater. And it's just causing bigger problems.
That you all are talking about. So a lot of people are just starting to hear more about regenerative ag. Is that we get better food that just keeps getting better because you're caring for the soil. Not only are they feeding their bodies, but they can feel really good that the land that it's grown on is getting better and better each season. And that food's only going to get better. It's just fantastic. That's a lot of value for money.
Yeah, and we're protecting our water too.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. Like, I love to use the carrot example that I stole from one of the one of the icons that kind of surrounds regenerative agriculture in a way. And Joel Salatin used a kind of a bit of an analogy, right? I call it the carrot analogy. So he talked about, today's carrot, right? Buy it at the grocery store, eat it, that tastes great. But compared to a carrot grown pre-World War II that, was grown in soil that was largely, if at all, treated with anything, like it was, completely untreated soil. The conversation, the idea revolves around the nutrient density of that food, right? So that carrot that was grown pre-World War II, and these are his words, but 10 times more nutrient dense than the carrot you eat today. And whether it's 10 times or 8 times or 15 times, there's a difference. And the difference that you experience just in the carrot that you pull over at the DeLorenzo farm compared to the carrot that you get in the grocery store. There's a difference. I mean, you have to wash the dirt off, but there's definitely a difference, right? So that's one of the things that I tell people all the time, is that what happens in, the industrial agricultural system is the soil becomes more and more sterile, right? Whenever a farmer first starts out on a plot of land in an industrial system, the first 5 years of production are astounding. They produce crops like you have never seen crops produce. And then after that 5 year, maybe 7 years, you see a distinct drop in production. And then you see a distinct uptick in the application of chemical fertilizers and pesticides and all the things in order to boost the survivability of the plant. All the while, you're denuding the richness of the soil. And like I said, I don't begrudge a single farmer, in this country of their practices, simply because they're out there farming. There are fewer and fewer of us out there. And I think it's just important that we ensure the practice of farming continues.
This episode of the Massachusetts Farm to Table podcast is brought to you by Renaissance Farms Permaculture and the shop at Renaissance Farms. Please visit them online, and while you're there, sign up for the weekly newsletter and get 15% off your next order from the shop. Each edition of the newsletter includes farm news, articles, recipes, and updates on upcoming classes, courses, workshops, and special events. Subscribers also receive exclusive subscriber-only discounts each week. Links are in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on another delicious journey through the Massachusetts Farm to Table podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media and join our Facebook group where you can join the local Farm to Table movement. Links are in the show notes. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please drop us a line at massachusettsfarmtotable@gmail.com. Until next time, remember to eat local, support your farmers, and keep the Farm to Table movement moving. Thanks for listening.